Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, or depending on when you're watching this. I'm Christina, and I am with Atlantic Institute. We have with us Cheryl Ruggles. She is going to teach us a little bit about water bath canning, and I'm going to go ahead and let her take it away. Welcome to our self-sufficiency class.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see that yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. I don't know what else you want. It's on my screen, but you need to tell me.
Did you
I clicked on, let me go back to
I'm
shrink
sorry, yeah,
this.
all that time we didn't do the dry run.
This is share.
And you picked
Okay.
a screen, right?
And I picked my AI canning presentation, share.
There we go.
All right, there we go. All right, so let me just make this in slideshow mode. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So this is my opening statement that this canning class today is not a pressure canner. Those take a different kind of canner that have more pressure. But I do steam canning, and back behind me, that steam canner, that the bottom part where you see the little seam, that's the only part that gets filled with water. The rest of it is the dome that goes over the jars. So that's called steam canning, and you can order those on Amazon. We've looked yesterday. They go range from about $55 to $80, and I started out with a steam canner that just had two holes, one on the front, one on the back, and you look at it until you see 7 inches of steam coming out, and that's when you start timing it. But now they have a little gauge on top, so you can kind of see the little black bumps on top of the dome. That has a gauge, and so when it gets to the green area, that's when you start timing it. And I find that that's much easier for me to make sure it's the right amount of steam without having to look for a little bit 7 inches of steam. Get my ruler out. It's like, is that enough steam? I don't know. So I like the one with the knob on top that has a gauge. All right, so let's get going. So here's the safety tip in the very beginning here. We talked a little bit about this with Tosca, but steam canning and water bath canning are done for fruit that is acidic enough not to ever get botulism, such as apples, peaches, plums, and grapes. Those are fine. You don't need a pressure canner for those. Pears, Asian pears, tomatoes. If you add a little lemon juice, they are acidic enough so you don't need to put a pressure canner. They don't need a pressure canner. And pickled items such as cucumbers, okra, peppers, and salsa are safe enough. If you use a modern recipe and commercial vinegar, now we were just talking about before that started that the vinegar might be lessening in acidity. So supposedly 5% is the safer amount of vinegar, and some of the stores are selling 4% vinegar. I personally don't know the chemistry on that, whether it matters if it's 4 or 5%. So that would be like maybe an extension agent question or something if you're concerned about if you plan to make a lot of pickles or something.
So,
To
Cheryl, for some reason,
Yes,
at the bottom of your screen, bottom of my screen says if you use a modern recipe and, oh, there we go. I think
yeah,
that's
and
the same
commercial
thing, the Zoom
vinegar.
bar. Yes, I think the Zoom bar was below there. All right. I was like, I couldn't see the bottom, but I think that's from Zoom. Okay. Sorry.
That's all right. I want you to be able to see it.
Yep. I was making sure.
All right, so the first thing you need to do is get everything ready. I've just gotten excited. I'm going to do some canning today, and then I find out I don't have enough lids or I don't have enough sugar or something. So gather your supplies and make sure you have the right amount of fruit, sugar, your lemon juice, your measuring tools, your jars, lids, rings, drip towels, and paper towel wipes. Those are just the basic things you need to have ready. So if you don't have those, it's not going to be a good day in your kitchen canning. So get all your stuff gathered. Then this is how I prepare my jars. A lot of times you might see somebody says to put them in the dishwasher and put them through a hot water cycle. That's fine. This is how I do it. I check around the top with my finger and make sure there's no nicks in the glass of the jars. If there is, I toss it away. That's not safe and it won't seal properly. And then I rinse and fill my jars with hot water until it's ready to fill. So that's, you can see those two pictures. There's my rinsing them. I turn them upside down, I swish them around, I put them, because I store my jars upside down in the boxes so they aren't gathering spiders and dust and everything. I just store them upside down in the boxes and they're
Okay,
ready
so
to go.
one interjection for you. I have in the past I've put them in the microwave and I've heated up the water. That way and kind of even left them in there.
Yeah, yeah, as long as they're nice and hot and clean, that's what you're after. So next step, I get my rings. This little pan I've used, I've had this pan since college. You can see how it's scraping out, but hey, it works great. It's the right amount of depth. So you put in your saucepan, you put the lids in, and you alternate putting them up and down so they won't stick to each other. And you cover them with water, and then you just keep them on low in your back burner so that they're ready to go. And you're trying to soften that little orange rubber seal. That's all you're trying to do, is to get it warm enough that it'll be soft enough to grab onto your jar. Okay, so we're going to start by making muscadine jelly. So the first thing is you make your juice. Now we have it what's called a Victoria strainer, and it's, I don't know if you can tell all the little parts there. You put the fruit up in the top white thing, and you smash it down to the hole with the red plastic hammer thing that it comes with, and it goes down through the different, you can get different kinds of, what are those things called? This is what my husband does. He puts it all together for me.
I'm gonna bet those are like straining cloths. So you can get
It's
different
not a
kinds of.
cloth, it's a metal screen. That's what it's called. You can
Oh,
get a grape screen, a tomato salsa screen. There's different screens with different amounts of holes, the size of the holes, so it lets the different amounts of juice and stuff come through.
oh,
And
Camille was saying a
then
sieve. Is it like a sieve? Like a.
kind of, but it's, yeah, but it's
Hmm.
connected to a crank. So you're turning it and you're pushing down with the fruit with the one hand and you're cranking it with the other hand. And then on the left, you see that tube thing coming out of it. That's where the skins and
Right.
seeds and stuff goes into that bowl, and the juice goes through the middle part and drops into a bowl. So you see my picture of grapes there. We have muscadines growing and we are making the muscadine juice. So usually when we get through, we've put all these muscadines in our freezer as we pick them. Then after muscadine picking is over, we have all these grapes in the freezer. So we take another day to pull them out and make them into juice, which takes up less space in my freezer. So then that's what you see on your right is a chunk. That's not a chunk of meat. That's a chunk of frozen muscadine juice. So I take it out of the freezer, put it in a plastic bowl, stick it in the microwave and defrost it. So it's ready to go. And notice I put 5 cups muscadines on the label because that's how much I need for one recipe. So I have it ready to go, already measured out. When I make the juice, I put it into Ziploc bags that are the right amount for a recipe. So it's ready to go to make a batch of muscadine jelly. All right, so the first step is you put your juice into a big pot. You want it large enough because when it boils later, it's going to expand and you want to have plenty of room for it to expand. So a large pot, and you put in a box of pectin. Now, I don't know what's with me and pectin, but my jelly seems to be too runny, so I always put half more than they say they do in the recipe. So if my recipe says 1 box of pectin, I will put 1.5 boxes of pectin just so it sets up the way I like it. But if you like your softer, you can just put the one box in. So anyway, you stir it in. It's kind of, you can see the little flaky things in there, and you just keep stirring it till it dissolves in there, and you bring it to a full boil. You know, at a full boil, it means when you stir it, it's still bubbly. Okay, so you bring it so it won't stir down from the bubbles. After you do that, this is where I have found I needed to learn something here. Is after I would open my jar of jelly, after a week or so, it would start being crystallized. I thought, what's going on with my jelly? Because there's nothing wrong with it, but it just doesn't look right. So I did some studying, and they said it depends on how fast you put your sugar in, because there's a chemistry that happens when you're adding sugar to the pectin to the juice. And if you pour it all in at once, it has a harder time dissolving it or something. So it says to add your sugar slowly. It's hard to get a picture in action of slow, but so now I do it slowly, and I'm stirring, and I don't just dump it all in at one time. And that does seem to have helped. My jelly that I made this time has not gotten so crystally. So anyway, so you add your sugar, and then you bring it to a full boil. And then it goes crazy. Once you get that full boil, then it starts getting all foamy, and you want to do it, stir one more minute. And I literally count 1,000, 1,000, and the thing gets all bubbly, and you think, it's gonna boil over. So that's another tip, is you don't want to do a double recipe, because it'll be too much and it'll boil over the top of your pot, and it would be a big mess. Unless you have a really big pot, I guess you could do 2 batches at one time. They usually say you just do 1 batch at a time. So anyway, so you get this full boil, and it's gonna be bubbling up, and you stir it for 1 whole minute. And I usually count 10 more seconds, because I just want to make sure that it gets thick enough. I like thicker jelly. So do that. Then once you turn off that heat, it's amazing. Sometimes you might need to pull it off of the burner for a minute to let the burner cool down. But then it'll sink back down, and you'll have all this foam on top. So I get a plastic spoon and a plastic bowl, and I just start scooping around the pot and pulling that foam out. So you can see the kind of before and after. It's almost done there on the right. So you have a little bit of waste there, pulling out that little bit of jelly with that foam, but it's not too bad. Okay, then you pour the jelly into jars. I use a little Tupperware measuring cup, and I fill the jars with, I have that canning ladle, funnel, canning funnel at the top that fits right down into the jar. And I pour it into the jar, and you just want to fill it to the bottom of where the threads are.
And I will
That's
just add that if you any of the supplies that you don't have, the one that's really nice is this canning jar
funnel.
funnel, because it keeps the sides of your jars clean. It
Yeah,
helps you just pour straight in. You can go a little bit faster. Otherwise, you're scooping and you're
yeah,
trying to get stuff in. It makes it, I mean, this right here is awesome.
yeah. And they're not expensive. They're pretty cheap. So that is a good tool to have for sure. All right, so you fill up your jars. And then the person who taught me canning, she says it's so important. I get a piece of paper towel, and I fold it up in half and in half again, and then I get it wet in the sink, and I kind of squeeze it out so they're just damp. Then I tear it into 8 pieces, because most of the little jars, I can get 8 jars into a batch. And I just have this little piece of paper towel, and I go around the top lid of the lid, not the lid, the jar. And they said that if 1 grain of sugar gets on that lid, it could not let it seal properly. So you definitely don't want to skip this step. You want to make sure you wipe off the top of the jar. And I just use a little piece of damp paper towel. You can use a regular washcloth, whatever you like to do, but you want to get it nice and clean. And it doesn't hurt sometimes if you did miss with your canning thing, you get it along those outside rim threads too. All right, then you get your tongs, or I have a new little metal, not it's a magnet, and it just reaches in there and pulls out a lid out of my little pot that was in the back burner, keeping warm. Put those lids on and then screw the ring on top of it. And notice I have a hot pad there to hold the jar because that jelly is hot. Just came out of the pot. So you want to hold on to the jar with that so you don't burn your hand, and just you want to get the rings tight, but not super tight. Just make sure they're nice and closed off.
So
All
Camille
right.
is asking, how tight do you screw the top?
You
What do
don't
they
want
say?
to,
They call it finger tight or something?
yeah, you just want to get it nice and tight. It shouldn't be loose. It should, but you don't want to crank it on there so it's so much pressure. It's hard to get them off. So yeah, just a nice tight squeeze is good. All right, so this is my inside of my canner, and notice it has a rack with holes, and I just fill it just so the water level is below the rack inside. So you can see the water coming up, and you just stop before it gets on the rack itself. You fill it up with water, you put your jars in there, and then it's time to put on the lid. You can see that gauge on top, and you turn on the heat. Now, actually, as I'm starting my jars, filling my jars, that's when I start the water heating on the canner. So it's already getting heated while I'm filling up the jars. But however you want to time it. Then it takes a little while, just like a regular water bath canner with the deep water. It takes a little while, but that water pressure is building inside, the steam is building. So that takes a while to get it boiling, and then the lid will start, you'll hear it jumping and making a loud noise, and you just turn it down. And this stays nice and pressured with just 1 or 2 dashes on my low of my stove. By the time it gets heated up and the steam builds in there, it doesn't take very long to boil that much water. So cuts back on time, cuts back on water. I love this steamer canner. All right, so there's the top of the lid. You can see it has the different zones. You have to check and see, read the instructions. No, depending on where you live, different zones have different pressure, the altitude and all that. So our area, I'm in Aiken, South Carolina. Once it gets to zone 3 and goes into the green area, and I can see green on both sides of that red needle, that's when I start timing it. So it depends on your zone and where that needle needs to be to start timing. So I think we're in zone 2 actually. So once I see that darker green on both sides of my red needle, I start timing. Okay, and there's my timer. So, and I sometimes will add 1 more minute or something. According, the canner itself will come with a little booklet, and it'll tell you how much time the different kinds of fruit need. So we don't have to guess about it. You should make sure you know how much time your process needs. And if it's a water bath with a big thing, it'll be the same amount of time. It just won't take as much time to get to that point because the water boils faster, less water. Okay, so when the timer goes off, you just turn off your stove and wait a few minutes. Remember, there is a hole in the back of your dome, so the steam is escaping out the back. And so you're not building a lot of pressure like a pressure cooker. So it doesn't take that long to lose the pressure. And then you can take off the lid, move your jars over, don't let them touch each other so that they just have their own airspace to cool down. And then you can start filling up the canner you fill up more water in your canner and put some more jars in and start your next batch. You don't have to wait for the water to cool down so the jars won't crack when you put them back into a big water bath canner. So it's really nice and fast to keep it going if you're canning a lot in one day.
That would make sense. Okay, so Camille has a question if I could ask it. So she says, once you're in your zone, do you have to watch that it does not go to a different zone or maintain the zone that it's staying in?
Once you get to your right zone, you just turn it down so that it stays, that needle stays there. And it, I haven't had a problem with the needle going crazy, going too far, going down. You just,
Going down. Okay.
yeah, just kind
So
of
you want to
turn it down.
maintain it. You kind of want to maintain. So then I think you'd want to make sure it stays in that zone. So maintaining it in that zone.
Right,
Turn
right.
it
So
down
you just,
enough that it's, yeah.
yeah. And when you hear it bouncing, you know that you've got too much heat going. So you turn your burner down and you just keep an eye on it, make sure that needle doesn't move too far one way or the other. It just stays right there.
Okay.
Haven't seen a problem with that. Okay, so when you take out your jars, whatever it is that you've canned, you should let them sit for 24 hours before poking them to check them, see if the seal's good.
That's the
Um,
hardest part because I want to know.
well, it's fun to hear them pop. You know, as soon as you take them out, you hear these little pop, 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 pops, and I think, oh, good, they're sealing. And it's very rare that I get one that doesn't seal. And if that's the case and you got one that didn't seal, I just put that one in the fridge and I eat it soon. And you're good for a couple weeks to get that eaten up. So um, if there's a
Oh,
really big
wait,
problem with all the lids, you
question
might
on
want
that.
to change the lids because the lids can make a difference.
So could you put that can back in with the next batch to see if it needed, could you
You
unscrew
could,
it, like wipe it down, make sure there isn't, put
yes,
it
you
back
could
down
try to
again?
reprocess it. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, but you would want to try to take off the lid and wipe it and make sure you didn't get some jelly on the lid or something on the,
right.
yeah. All right, and then after you waited 24 hours and you know that the seal has sealed, that when you push the center, it doesn't pop back up, that it stays down without any, don't 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 play with it. Just push once, and if it didn't pop down, you know you did something wrong. If it's not popping, then it's sealed. It's good. So that's when you write the date and what it is, because you'll be amazed. A lot of jellies will start looking like the same flavor. It's like, is this grape or is this strawberry or anyway? So always make sure you write on it. I just use a little magic marker thingy, little pin, and write the date. And if you know you're going to be making more batches, sometimes I'll put a little 1 if that's my first batch, or a 2, so I'll know which batch it came from, because sometimes I'm experimenting with the amount of pectin and I want to know which batch had more pectin, and it's like, oh, I like this one better, so it'll help me next time if I'm trying to get it to a certain thickness or something. My
And
trick.
just from my own experience, I made pickles
Mm-hmm.
a couple of times in, I think 2 years ago. They're on the shelf still, and I needed to probably go, and we decided we just need to go open them all up because honestly, I made pickles, but we don't really eat a ton of pickles. And I think I had them, oh, we get really busy here, and I had them sitting in the fridge in pickle crisp before because somebody said put something in there like pickle crisp or something like that. And I don't know if it got washed off good enough because when I opened up one thing of pickles, it had this tartness to it of like baking soda or something that
Okay.
maybe didn't get, and it was just like, well, shoot, now which
Don't know which
batch,
one. Yeah,
because I don't want to go open 15 jars of pickles.
right.
I'm like, I'm gonna open them up and taste a pickle out of each one, and I'm gonna have to give people jars of pickles. Go here, I opened this. Now eat it. I'm like, that doesn't look good.
Yes, so that is another good reason to maybe give it a little number when it comes out of a batch, because then you'll know if there was a problem with that batch. It's like, okay, let's just dump these jars because we know we don't like the taste of these guys. Okay. Now that my stuff is going
So
down. Yeah, we're gonna
here,
go over.
Georgina was asking, do you leave the screw part over the sealed lid? So
I
do you
do.
leave the rings?
Yes, I leave the rings just because of convenience. When I open them, I like to be able to keep it closed with the same ring in the lid. So there's people who take them off and reuse them right away, and that's totally fine because you can get those new lids that have the whole thing like a regular jar from the store. You can just get a box of those and put those on your container whenever you open one. So I just keep them there unless I'm getting low. I'm doing a whole lot of canning and I ran out of rings. I'll just start taking them off of the jars that I've done already. But yeah, you don't have to keep them on there. All right, so I'm going to show you how I do peaches. We used to have peach trees, but they died. We have a new peach tree growing, but no peaches on it yet. So we go to the fruit stands. We go to the Titan Fruit Farm and buy a box of peaches, and those are riper and nicer than the grocery store. So, and they're cheaper because I got a big old box for $12. So, that's what I do when I don't have peaches on my tree. So the first thing you do is you blanch your fruit in a large pot of simmering water. It doesn't need to be boiling, it just needs to be simmering with little bubbles. And you just put your peaches down in there, and when you see the skin start cracking, you'll see it peeling, kind of cracking open. You remove them, have a slotted spoon I use. I scoop them out and put them into a bowl. And it takes about 2 minutes to put them in that hot steaming water to get them to crack. Depends if your water's hot enough. Then you put your bowl down in your sink and you turn on the cold water and you fill it up and you just let them sit there a couple minutes, even if you don't need to wait that long. And it just kind of seals the heat from going through the fruit because you don't want to cook the fruit per se. You just want to get it hot enough to let the skin peel off. And then you put them in a bowl, take them over to the table, and that's my husband peeling. The peel should come right off. I use a paring knife and I just kind of slide where the crack is and it'll start coming off. Then you have to take out your pit and makes good compost too. Get in the compost. Oh, and in my, I'll show this with the pears later, but I put the peaches in a water bowl that is filled with lemon juice. So fourth a cup of lemon juice in a big old bowl. And that's where we put the sliced peaches as we are peeling them. We put them in that bowl of lemon juice until we're ready to start putting them in the jars. All right, now this is another trick I've come up with that my husband thinks is legendary, but maybe other people do it too. But you put your fruit in a syrup. And I always used to have to follow the recipe, 2 cups sugar, 4 cups water, whatever syrup, and keep that pot going on the stove and use it to fill the jars. And then I'd run out of syrup. So then I have to make the syrup and then I'd have to, you know. So I thought, okay, I can do the math here. So if I'm getting this much syrup from doing water and sugar, that's so much sugar per jar. So what I do now is I use my funnel, my nifty little green funnel, and I put the sugar directly into I empty out the hot water. These jars have been sitting there all hot. I empty it out. I put the sugar in, and then I put a cup of hot water, and I stir it till it's dissolved. And there's my simple syrup right there. So I can do it per jar, and then I'm not wasting or waiting for the pot to boil the sugar to do it. So I put a pot of, I get my measuring pitcher thing in the microwave with hot water. I keep the water hot by using the microwave. And then I get my sugar, put it in, pour in a cup of water, stir it, and then I start filling my jars with fruit. So, and I like a third of a cup of sugar. Um,
Yeah. Did you ever have you ever seen, my mom said years ago that when they used to can that they used white grape juice
oh,
sometimes instead of a simple syrup because it was like lower in sugar. So they would, I guess, I don't know, maybe they boiled some white grape juice and then they'd pour that
Yeah.
in and
I
sometimes use
haven't
that.
ever done white grape juice, but I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought, oh, I've never done that.
Yeah, I think this would be cheaper, but I don't know. Maybe if you
Probably,
had your own
yes.
white grape juice, you might
Right.
be
Well, this would be cheaper, but I'm thinking maybe it's lower in sugar for some people that maybe don't want
right. And you
too
can go
much.
down to a fourth a cup of sugar, which isn't a lot for a whole quart of peaches. So
Right.
it's a whole lot better than the heavy syrup at the grocery store.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
made with fructose corn syrup.
Yeah. All right. So you fill your jars and it's already got the syrup in there. And then I add a tablespoon of lemon juice to a quart, just for color. You don't have to have it. It's one of those fruits that has enough acidity without, but I just think it's safer. It makes me feel better, and it's supposed to help keep the color of the fruit better to have the lemon juice. So that's what I but so check your recipe, make sure you're following a good recipe that you can trust, and then follow that. But you don't have to put lemon juice in your peaches, as far as I've ever seen. So, but I do anyway. And then if you, after stuffing your peaches in there, putting your lemon juice, if you need a little more water to fill up that jar to the bottom of the threads, you can pour from that pitcher that you've been keeping hot water from your microwave, and just pour a little more water in there before you wipe down the top of the jars, the rims of the jars, and with your paper towel, and get your ring, your lid in your ring, and you're ready to put the peaches on the canner. And it does say, I've gotten pretty good at um, packing the peaches, and we found that if you do try to do half, like you try to cut your peaches in half and do halves, it's harder to get more fruit in there because they're just bulkier. And so we ended up cutting it because you can't eat a half a peach at one time either. And it's hard to get them out of the jar with the half a peach. So we just been slicing up our peaches, and we can get
Yeah.
more fruit in the jar.
And I think when you think you've got it full, keep packing a little bit more because
Yeah.
it kind of shrinks
Yeah.
in there, right?
Yes. Yes. And you can pack it better. You don't have so much floating water when you do the slices instead of the halves. Anyway, so yeah, you put your peach jars in there, make sure your canner is filled with water up to the bottom of the rack, and put your gauge, watch for your gauge, and set the timer. Peaches. All right, now tomatoes is kind of similar to peaches. Tomatoes, you want to blanch those in the hot water again till you see the skin cracking, and that takes a couple minutes in that hot water. There's my slotted spoon. Then you put them in the cold water again in the sink, and you put them on a tray, and you start doing some peeling. I'll show you the next picture. So this is my nifty tool. I don't know if anybody here is a Pampered Chef fan, but I had a friend that used to sell it, and so I have all these nice gadgets. And this little pronged, sharp thing is great for taking out tomato stems. So however you want to do it, paring knife, whatever. So you pull out your stem, and then all that peel just kind of pops off very easily if you've had your tomatoes in that hot water long enough. So then you can cut them in halves or quarters and put them straight into your hot, clean jars. So I have all my jars hot and ready with water in them. I just dump out a jar of water, stick the tomatoes in it, and take it over to the stove, put on the ring and the lid, and they're ready to go. Tomatoes are pretty fast. I like doing tomatoes.
Tomatoes to me are fun. I actually really enjoy canning a lot of tomatoes. I mean, one year I canned quite a bit and then I made some sauce and canned that and I loved that. But
Mm,
it like making the sauce took a lot of work.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and we usually end up with an assembly line. I never used a tool like that, but like one of us blanches, one of us takes the skin off, and then one of us usually cuts it up. We usually cut it, slice it, and then we cut it into into like little into squares or something like that. But I bet you, I wonder if this is faster. I'm wondering if this is faster to take the inside, take the core out, and then just do something to quickly cut it up. Because
Right.
we tend to, we
I
might need
find
to.
that after you've processed it, am ready to use my jar of tomatoes, I just start shaking it and it breaks down
Right, and
into
it
little
breaks it all
pieces
down.
anyway, so I don't
Right,
worry about chopping too
chopping
much.
it
But
up. So, because you're putting in kind of like whole like that, you're coring it and taking the skin off and putting it in pretty
yeah,
much
I cut it in halves and quarters
in
usually,
halves and quarters. Yeah, yeah, that's not a
depending
bad
on the
idea.
size of the tomato.
Yeah, but I do
All
love
right.
keeping tomatoes.
Yeah, so here's the packing, and I leave a half an inch at the top. You add a little bit of salt and the lemon juice. Check your recipe for pints. I usually do a teaspoon of, or a half, yeah, that's a half a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of lemon juice in my tomatoes. Wipe those tops of the jars, put on your lids and rings. So
In each jar, right?
yeah, you do individually
In each
each
jar,
jar. Yeah.
right.
And
Do
then
you
I
put that
wipe
on?
the
Do you are
rings.
you put that in at the top then, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was gonna
Yep.
say you can't go and put that in at the bottom at all and just like have all the jars
Well,
done.
you could, but I'm
Yes,
keeping my jar nice and hot with the water right there.
right.
So I
Yeah,
just, that's the order I do it, but you
yep,
could
I
put it
got
in.
you.
All right. So processing tomatoes is the same. Fill your canner with the water, add the jars, put on the lid, wait for the green gauge, time the process, and put it in your pantry after 24 hours. So, and then, oh yeah, sometimes you can see there's water on the lid. That's from just pulling it out of the pot to put it on. But after you can it, when you take off the lid, sometimes there's a pool of water on top of the lid, and the weight of that will take a little more time for it to seal. So I just kind of gently tip it to the side to get that water pool off the top of the lid before I move it over onto the towel to cool. So it won't have all that water to have to get
Camille,
rid of before it seals.
Camille had a question. She said, "Did you say half a teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of juice applicable per
Yes,
pint?"
yes.
Pint, right? Okay,
And a quart would take more.
right. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Now I'm gonna show you applesauce. All right, we have this nifty quarter slicer peeler machine, and you twirl it yourself, and it is wonderful. It saves a lot of time. So that's what we start with our apples. We wash them. Oh, and that's my drip towel. I said, get your drip towel ready. It's like whenever I'm cutting anything, I make sure we get a towel out first. Otherwise, your hands get juicy, drippy, and it's all over the floor and it's a mess. So we keep that drip towel around whatever we're working on, and we can stick our wrist down real quick on it to catch the juice, and you just all the little tricks to the trade to keep it as simple and clean as possible.
And I will tell you all this is definitely necessary because my kids were cutting tomatoes and my oldest is a culinary student or graduated from culinary school and her friend was here that was also in culinary school. And I came over here to do a Zoom class while they were in there doing some finishing up cutting up tomatoes. And I came back and down the front of the thing on the floor was all this tomato juice. And I'm like, do you all not see the towels? Do you not like, we put the cutting board and I usually put a towel like right on the edge of the cutting board so that anything that might I mean, I'm like, did you all not pay attention? I was like, I'm like, now you all get to wipe it down on the counters and the floor. And I'm
And
like,
that's probably when they'll remember to put the towel next time because they have to
right,
clean up.
because the towel is a necessity for
Yes, yes.
sure.
So you don't want to use your prettiest towels because it can stain them up. So keep my old ones in the back of the drawer and pull them out for canning time. All right. So after you put it through the core slicer thing, you're going to have the ends that didn't catch into the cutter part. So you're going to have to cut those off. And that's where we start munching on them. We just pop them in our mouths and eat them. Or there might be that, like you see one with the black part, because these are homegrown apples and they're going to have some problems. So you just cut out, that's my job. My husband twirls, we call it twirl. He twirls the apples and I trim them. So you cut out any bad spots and then you put them in a pot. This is my favorite pot. It goes for everything. I like to cut them in half now. I found that it's a little easier once they start getting softer to be already cut in half. But I will fill this whole pot all the way full of apples. Okay, so you heat your sliced apples. They need a little water, but you just need to put like a cup of water, put the lid on to your pot and just start cooking them and keep an eye on them because I have waited too long before I got back to them and burned the bottom, which is not good. I have a nifty smasher tools, the potato smasher from Pampered Chef, but a
I have that. I have that
regular
one
potato
too.
masher is good. Any kind of thing to smash your apples as you go. It may need more water. You have to keep an eye on it of how thick it is. Some apples are drier than other apples, and so you might need a little more water. And then after it's gotten pretty well smashed how you like it, we love chunky applesauce. So we don't try to get it like baby food. But you could put it through a blender. You could, if you like really thin stuff, my father-in-law loved it when I would make sure his batch was thinner. He liked it softer, no chunks. So you can decide how chunky you want it, but we like it chunky. So we'll keep smashing till we like it and we'll taste it and see. It's like, these apples could use a little bit of sugar. So I'll put maybe, this is a very big pot. So I'll put like a cup of sugar to that whole batch and stir it in. And if I want cinnamon applesauce, I'll just shake a little bit of cinnamon on it. So you can make it flavor how you like at this point. But sometimes we've made applesauce with no sugar whatsoever because it just was fine. The way the apples tasted, we liked it. But you always need to at least put in 1 cup of water. Just needs that moisture so it won't burn so easily. All right, so if you'll use your magic funnel, fill up the jars. I use a spoon to push it down in there to get the air bubbles out. Stir it around in there a little bit. Wipe the rims, add the lids and rings, process in the canner, and if you don't fill up all the jars or you don't have quite enough to fill up a jar, just save it for dinner because it's so delicious and your house is going to smell so good and you'll be sad if you didn't save some aside to eat. All right. Last year, in May, my husband gave a fruit tree class on Atlantic Institute, and he was bragging about a year ago we got 340 pounds of fruit, of pears. This year, after his class, we had over 700 pounds of pears. And this is just part of our crop that you see in these boxes. There's a cooler full, there's another couple boxes, and we actually have a few pears that are strays that are the late part of the producing on the tree right now. We just eat those fresh.
Dang, and what kind of
Anyway,
pears
we
are
had a
those?
lot of
What
we
kind
have
of
two
those?
kinds. We have Southern Bartlett and we have Orient. Southern Bartletts are the more pear-shaped and this Orient are the more round shape.
Yes, it says Southern Bartlett's are towards the back there in the Orient. Wow,
Yeah,
700
so
pounds.
yeah, it was a lot of pears. So we were looking for people that wanted pears. So we would take bags to the neighbors and bags to church and bags everywhere. And we took boxes to fruit to Salvation Army, the soup kitchen, and the Christ Central. And we took them to the Our Lady food pantry. I'll show you a picture of that at the end. But anyway, we didn't keep 700 pounds of pears. Uh, anyway, so this is what my husband thinks this is a unique way of peeling pears. So what I do is I slice off the bottom and I slice off the top. And then in my hand, if you can see it under our picture, my picture is on top of the next slide, the next picture. But anyway, move it over. Then you can hold it easier. It doesn't slip out of your hand and try to peel with a peeler. So we just take a paring knife and slide it from top to bottom, and we can hold it better without having the cut the top and the bottom on there, which are curvy. And then we core them and we put them into, usually we put them into fourths and scoop out those seeds. So if you don't like the peeler type with a potato peeler, and I would always get my fingernail or my skin in the peeler, it drove me crazy. So that's how we peel our pears. And then same as the peaches, we get a bowl of some lemon water, fourth of a cup of lemon juice in a big bowl of water, and just start adding our sliced pears into that as we are peeling them. And it'll keep the color of the fruit better too. Okay, you prepare the syrup the same way. Put your sugar in, add your hot water, stir it up, and start loading in your fruit. So that's what I use to put my pears together. And I put about a tablespoon of lemon juice per jar of quart. Okay, enjoy the harvest. So you check for sealed jars after 24 hours, label and store. And we had lots of pears. And here's Miss Addie. She's at the Our Lady of the Valley Food Pantry. And she was happy to take the pears because they don't always get fresh fruit at the food pantry. So there will be
So,
places you can share with.
so Georgina was asking if you can use fresh lemon lime juice.
Lemon lime juice.
Like, can you use
I don't know.
fresh lemon or fresh lime
Oh yeah,
juice?
I would think so, if as long as you're measuring it out. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because I know sometimes we all have that bottle of lemon juice in the fridge.
right. I just buy 2 bottles of that the big ones every year, and that gets me through my season usually. So, okay, Mr. Scientist back here says the pH is balanced in the jars more than a fresh fruit squeeze.
Very true, very true. Didn't think of that. That's why we need science, Mr. Science
Yes,
behind you.
yes, we need
Yeah.
science. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions other than what we've gone through, I'm happy to answer or try or whatever.
I think I like this whole thing of
I
steam
want to talk
canning.
about drones more.
What did he say? All right, I was gonna say I like this whole idea of the steam canner
It is a
because
wonderful thing.
I often think, what am I gonna do if I am have more than if because we have a family of five. Sometimes if I'm gonna can something and it's kind of rare because I'm still learning this, if I've got a whole bunch of it. And then I have to let that water cool, or some people have had, like, 2 water bath canners, so that one is
Right.
cooler, one is and I'm like and then I will say, a lot of people say you shouldn't water bath can on your glass top range, and
Oh,
I've thought I have a glass top range, and I've always water bath canned on it, and I've been fine, but I get that the weight of it.
right. Yeah. And there are recommendations in your stove booklet, whether or not you can with a glass top
Uh,
stove. I use my glass top stove as well, but like I said, I'm only using 3 inches of water
right.
instead of the whole big
Because
old
I
can.
will tell you that
So,
that is, I mean, because I do have issues with some of my burners where they'll all of a sudden turn up really high, or I'll go to turn it off and it won't turn off, and I have to go another revolution of the dial and then it finally turns off. So sometimes I wonder if the
uh-huh.
weight of everything messed with something underneath there, the pressure weight, maybe could have messed with something underneath it. I don't know. So, so Camille said, yes, I like the steam canner also. I had not heard of it. Question, please repeat the easiest way of making the simple syrup, the amount of sugar and water. Oh. And I liked that simple syrup idea because I know that I've made up simple syrup and I've poured it into the jars, and then I've needed extra and I'm like, crap, now I gotta go make up some more simple syrup. Um, Cheryl froze. Whoop, and then we just lost her. So you don't have to start from the cold pot each time because I don't think it really matters. She just adds to this. So you said the steam pot is only one size. I don't know if it's one size, but you have to look on Amazon to see that, or somewhere online to see if it's only one size. But I don't think you have to start from the cold pot each time because I think that metal there is gonna keep it is gonna cool off pretty quickly, and you're adding the water below it. Does anybody in here has water bath can or know what the water bath canner looks like? I mean, I can go get my water bath pot. If anybody needs me to, so I can show what that looks like if you want. Um, I figured I could just do that if you want, but all right. Yes. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me mute for 1 second to show. Yes. So, okay, Cheryl's on her phone with us here. So she was asked, Georgina was asking, is the steam pot only one size?
Yes. It's ready to fit the same amount of jars as a regular canner, so you can get 7 quarts or 8 pints.
Okay, great. And then she had asked, also Camille had asked, please repeat the easier way of making the simple syrup, the amount of sugar and water.
Yes, if you want a sweeter syrup, you put a half a cup of sugar in every jar with a cup of water and stir it, or you can go down as low as 1/4 of a cup. But I use a third. A third is my favorite. I've tried 4ths, and that's I like it a little sweeter. So my favorite's a third of a cup.
Cheryl, are you doing pints or quarts with that?
That's a quart.
That's a quart. Okay.
Yep.
You do a whole cup of water in that?
Yep, I put a cup of water so that I have plenty of juice to go around on my fruit.
Okay. All right, very neat. All right. Anybody else have a question? All right, so Camille, I had asked Camille if anybody's canned before because I was going to pull out my water bath can if you wanted to see it. Because she said yes, she wanted to see it because I was going to show the difference. All right, so this I got this from a friend who likes a can, and so this right here is a water bath canner, and you can see it's a 3-quart pot. Let me
say 3 gallons. Is that how much a canner holds?
This one here, let me unblur. So this is a 33-quart pot, 9-jar rack. This is a huge one. All right, just so you see. So this is my huge canner, and this is the lid for it. And inside here, all the other lids for all the other things right here. These are the lid. And yet another lid. All right. So this was the size. I used to have a canner that was this big. This is
a regular water bath, or is that a pressure can?
This is a water bath. So this one held 6 little pint jars, right? But now I have this larger one, and this one has a rack like this. And so you put your stuff on this rack, and then this give me the ability to put on top, so I can do a second row. So this holds 9 quarts, and it can even go a little bit bigger. So this large, right? You sit this down inside the water. So I fill them. I put the jars in here, and then I drop it down in here slowly, and it goes down inside. So it looks like that inside. I'll put bright light in here. So it looks like that inside. And then all of that gets filled with water over about an inch or two above the head of the jar. And so that's why this takes hours. And you can only do, um, if you were doing quarts, you could only do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can only do 6 pretty much. Or you could, what does it say here? 9 jar rack, 33 quart pot. So you could do, but the hard part is this has to cool down. This water has to cool down before you can do another set. That's where I was saying I like the steamer that Cheryl has, because nothing has to cool down.
If you just wait a couple minutes after each batch and open it up, move the jars and start it up again.
Yep. Yep. All right. I just let you in, Cheryl. Yeah. So, here, and just so you can see, Cheryl, this is what I was talking about. This is, so you can see how my size, and then you can see how big this is. So this takes a while. Now I can do a second rack in here. So I did figs. I did like 22 little tiny jars of figs, of fig jam, and had them all in here, but it took about 3 hours to get it to boil. So it
Wow.
took quite some time. And I had it outside on the propane tank on a stand that had the flame. And it took about probably 3 hours for me to get it to boil. And then it had to boil. I boiled it for 20 minutes. I wasn't quite sure. There was some conflicting times. Cheryl didn't answer her phone. My other friend that came didn't answer their phone. So I was conflicted, and I was like, better safe than sorry. I thought, I'm not so sure if you can over water bath. So I don't know, can you over steam?
I don't
Like
think a 5-minute extra is gonna hurt anything.
I was kind of going, I'd rather over than under. So
Yeah.
um so yeah. And so I was saying I used to have one. I have sometimes split it up into 2 days and left the water on the stove. And the next day just put my jars in and heated the whole thing up. Put my jars, if the water's cold, your jars need to be cold. If the water's warm, your jars need to be warm. And I think you're better off having having hot, clean jars to put everything in anyway.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I was thinking,
if you're cooking jam, you've got your warm jars, but yeah, it's still you're getting in and out of that big tall pot. And I was always banging the jar against the pot and tipping it or dropping it, or so
yeah,
steamer canner is my friend.
yeah, I for sure I like that. I mean, even though I got this for my friend for like $15, I'm thinking for the ease, for the fact that I don't can as much with it because it's a
The pain.
pain, that it might be worth the investment of buying a
Put it on
canner.
your Christmas list.
Put it on my Christmas list.
Yes.
I'm gonna email all of you my Christmas list.
Take donation.
Buy me those cups of coffee, people, that are on all of our Eventbrite. Yes. So Camille said, I've learned a ton. I like the steam canner, going on Amazon after class. Cheryl, call me next year if you have an overabundance of fruit.
Where does she live?
Where is it? Does she live again? I have to scroll all the way up. Thank you. Put it down in here. I have to scroll all the way down. North Carolina. Oh, there you go. Ooh.
Maybe we can meet halfway.
You can make a trip. You can make a field trip to Aiken, South Carolina.
There you go. There you go.
Camille, if you did not watch it on our YouTube channel, there is her husband, the fruit doctor. He did a whole class for us on growing fruit trees, and it was really phenomenal. So
you can come see my trees and get some fruit.
yeah. Yeah, look that up. You want to watch that because that was really good. There's some attachments that they was talking about in there that if you email me after you watch it, I'll email you those attachments that he sent as well. And I don't know, I'm sitting here going, gosh, I really should be making a field trip to Aiken from where I'm at.
You should.
I'm not. I need to get some applesauce and some.
Oh, you just want to take the jars. I get.
I'm not going. I could just buy that. I could buy it. Oh, well, but you know what? I could come and help too. I wouldn't mind coming and helping. Make it all go faster.
Yes, these apples behind me in my basket, those are Nittany apples that came off of our miniature trees, and we're just now picking those, and we'll be making Nittany applesauce.
Wow.
Yep. And then the last of the fruits outside, we have our tomatoes are still growing. My husband did a good job spraying for that fungus. So we've still got, it's gotten cooler, so they're happier. So we'll still be canning some tomatoes, and then we have persimmons ahead.
Uh-huh. So I ended up getting blossom end rot on our tomatoes, even though I buried fish below the soil. Because
Okay.
everybody said bury fish,
We spray it with calcium spray, and
calcium.
that helps a lot. That makes a big
Yeah.
difference.
And I got these black bugs that then once they bite it, it makes a bruise in that spot. These little black bugs that look like the kind that swim in a pool too. Like they're just kind of like they look like
Little
this,
beetle bugs.
like a beetle, like a bigger, but it's kind of they have long legs. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Has like a body.
Does it have a shield shaped body?
It might, but they're big. They're not little. They're like literally like that. They're that
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, they get in mine too, but we use Dead Bug Brew, and that's my favorite. It's an organic, and it's great bug killer.
Somebody said they sprayed their stuff with like Seven Dust, and I was like, I don't want to use Seven Dust because that's
Tried that, doesn't seem to be as effective.
yeah.
Dead
I
Bug
was like Dead Bug Brew.
Captain Jack's Dead Bug Brew. You can get it at Lowe's. It's got a guy with a red flannel shirt on the front cover of his bottle.
Okay.
They come.
Well, the whole reason I have your cell phone number is I can take pictures and text them to you and go, what is this? What is that? What do I need to
Yeah,
put
it
on
has
it?
Brent says it has spinosad in it. That's the insecticide you want to look for, spinosad.
Ah, spinosad. All right. Well, this year I'm going to actually try to do a winter garden. I'm
Oh,
going to see
yeah.
if I can do a winter garden.
Broccoli and Brussels sprouts and stuff.
Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and some lettuce or something. I think lettuce grows.
Cabbage. Cabbage
Yeah,
will go
lettuce.
good.
Oh, you know what? So I do want to ask while we are on here. Tosca was going to can strawberries whole.
Oh,
And I said, I don't know if you can do that. I've never done like a
I
dry.
I've only smashed strawberries to make jam, so I've never tried to can strawberries on their own. I would think you'd need to make a sugary something like pie filling
Because I
or
told her that they
whatever.
do lose flavor. They lose flavor after a while. Then I think there needs something in there needs to be preserving it.
Yeah, I would think so. She'd have to investigate a recipe for that.
Like, could you can broccoli? Can you can
I've never
broccoli?
pressure can.
You could pressure can broccoli.
Yeah, vegetables, you need pressure cooking.
Pressure cans, right? Okay. Do people? I mean, I don't know if I've ever opened up a can of broccoli.
I know. I've never seen a can
Like,
of
I don't think I've
broccoli.
opened up canned broccoli.
I would freeze the broccoli. I
Yeah,
would.
I'm
I,
thinking
I
maybe.
just make freezer jam with strawberries, or I have made strawberry jam once upon a time cooked, but I like
I'm
freezer.
thinking some of those things, those vegetables, you might want to parboil for a minute
Yeah,
first, then
put them in the jar. Yeah.
put them in the freezer. Then,
Oh,
like,
freeze.
I mean, I've done that with squash and zucchini before. I've cut them all up, I've parboiled them, and then I've laid them all out in parchment paper individually, and then I put them in the deep freezer and let them freeze, and then I put them all into a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer. That way, it's not a clump
Right.
of vegetable together because that doesn't break down well
Yeah.
when it thaws. And that way, when I put it in a pan, I can measure out how much I want to because it's all individually frozen.
Yeah.
So I've done that before.
Sounds
Um,
good. I don't have the freezer space to do the shelf
well,
thing,
I
but I
have,
think
yeah,
that's how they do it. Yeah.
that's the hard part is, and I had to make, I mean, I have two deep freezers and two fridges with freezers. So I've had to make the space to put something in there.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
If anybody
All right.
wants to drive to Aiken and get some muscadine juice out of my freezer and make jelly, I am happy to share. We have more than we need. I have made muscadine jelly out the wazoo, and I still have frozen juice in the freezer. So I'll share if anybody wants to come visit.
I probably should do that.
Well, Cheryl and Christina, this has just been really good. And I did can the whole strawberries, but I haven't tried them yet.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
will let you know how that, it
Yeah.
was the kind of
Did
simple
you
syrup.
Okay, so you just put did you chop them up or just put halves in or
I just put the whole thing in.
the whole
And I
strawberry?
got the recipe from a canning book my mother gave me from Ball themselves, all these
Okay,
different ways to do it.
yeah,
And the cover is torn off, but it's like that's where I get all my canning experience from.
yes. Yeah,
And
that's a good reliable, tried and true. That sounds good. You'll have to taste them, see if you like them.
yeah,
Tasha,
well,
did
that's
you
what
leave the green on? Did you leave the green
um,
on?
no, I took
Oh,
that off, but what they tell you to do is sprinkle them with sugar and then let them sit for like 6 hours at room temperature. And then they form their own juice and you kind of parboil them. And some of them mush up and some of them stay like whole. So one jar has the mushy ones in it and the rest of them have the whole ones in them, but the tops are off. And they tell you don't use anything that's even remotely bruised
mm-hmm.
or has a hollow thing. And I
Yeah.
did that the same time I made the jam. So we'll just
Yeah,
see.
I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, what would you put them on? How do you plan to use them?
Um, well, I don't really know.
Okay, you're experimenting.
I know that John loves strawberries, and I've heard there's going to be a shortage. Yeah, because the California crops have gone crazy or something like that. So I thought, well, I'm going to put up strawberries. So I tried a bunch of different methods.
Cool. Okay,
And
well, that's thinking ahead. There you go.
yeah, so all through the winter, um, John will have strawberries. And I'm thinking about like making a strawberry pie and, you
Yeah.
know, different things. I'm kind of settling on strawberry jam. That's I kind of like that the best. It was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hard to beat strawberry jam.
Yeah, and I figure I could just use that on everything. And I have a sourdough bread recipe that all this group of friends I have, we all made this bread back 40 some years ago. And one of us kept the starter. And I
Oh,
just got that starter like a couple days ago. And in exchange for the starter, I am doing her strawberry jam. So this bread was like, it brings back fond memories and everything. So I want to make that bread and have that strawberry jam on it.
yum.
Yeah.
But
Making me want to make